Recent data shows the median retirement savings for American men in their early 50s sit at around $93,000, not 900,000, 93, for men who have been earning well above the national average for years, sometimes decades. The income was real. The wealth did not follow. So where did it all go? The answer is not recklessness. It is not ignorance. The reason is a specific set of financial traps that most high earners walk straight into. Not because they are careless, but because every single one of those traps looks like the right move at the time. They look like success. They look like a reward. They look exactly like what was supposed to happen next. This video is going to show you the mechanism behind that pattern. Not budgeting advice, not spending less on things you enjoy, and the actual structural reason why high income and real wealth stay disconnected for men who are otherwise doing everything right. My name is Alex, and if you have ever looked at your salary, then looked at your savings, and felt like something quietly went wrong somewhere along the way, watch this through. Because that gap is not accidental, it is structural. The system around you was designed to absorb your income before it could become wealth, and I'm going to show you exactly how it works. It starts with a concept that reframes everything. Once you understand what a golden anchor actually is, and how quietly one gets attached to your finances, the whole pattern becomes impossible to unsee. Here is something worth sitting with for a moment. Most people think financial danger looks like recklessness, gambling, overspending on things you can't afford, maxing out credit cards on vacations you had no business taking. But the traps that actually destroy long-term wealth for high earners, they don't look like that at all. They look like discipline. They look like a reward. They look like the natural next step after years of working hard and finally getting somewhere. That is what makes them so difficult to see coming. Call them golden anchors. The name matters because both words matter. Golden, because these commitments are genuinely impressive. They signal that you have arrived. They are the kind of purchases people congratulate you on. And anchor, because that is exactly what they do to your financial life. They fix you in place. They look substantial from the outside, but what they are really doing is making it impossible for you to move. A golden anchor is any large, recurring, locked-in obligation that expands your lifestyle but compresses your options. A mortgage on a house that stretched your budget. A luxury car lease that refreshes every 3 years. Private school tuition that started as a 1-year decision and quietly became a 10-year commitment. A country club membership that felt reasonable at signing and now just shows up on the statement like a tax you forgot you agreed to. None of these things is irrational on its own. That is the point. Each one, in isolation, has a perfectly reasonable justification. The house is an investment. The car is reliable. The school is an opportunity for your kids. The club is networking. The justifications are real. But the combination, that is where the math starts working against you. Let me give you a concrete example. Take Marcus. He is 48 years old, a senior director at a logistics company, pulling in $210,000 a year. By any external measure, Marcus is doing well. He has a mortgage on a 4-bedroom house in a good suburb, a leased BMW he upgraded 2 years ago. His 2 kids are in private school, and he and his wife carry a joint membership at the kind of club where you have Sunday brunch and talk about renovations. Now run his fixed monthly obligations. Mortgage is $4,100. The lease is $1,040. Private school tuition, split across 2 kids, runs $3,100 a month. The club is $600. Add in insurance, utilities, and the subscriptions that have quietly multiplied over the years. And Marcus is sitting at roughly $12,800 a month in committed, non-negotiable outflows before he buys a single bag of groceries. His take-home after federal and state taxes is around $11,400. He is structurally underwater before the month begins. And here's the part that does not get said enough. Marcus is not careless. He is not irresponsible. He made a series of individually reasonable decisions across a decade, and the cumulative weight of those decisions has quietly removed every degree of financial flexibility he once had. He cannot take a risk on a new opportunity at work because he cannot afford 3 months without a paycheck. He cannot negotiate hard on his salary because leaving feels impossible. He is not managing his career anymore. His fixed costs are managed for him. That is what the golden anchor actually does. It does not just cost you money. It costs you leverage. It costs you the ability to make decisions from a position of strength rather than obligation. And notice that none of this required a single bad decision in the traditional sense. No crisis, No emergency. Just a decade of upgrading in step with income, which is exactly what the world around you encouraged you to do at every stage. The mechanism that made all of those upgrades feel not just reasonable but inevitable. The thing that ensured the ratchet only ever clicked in one direction. That is what we need to understand next. And it starts with a psychological trap so deeply embedded in how we think about progress that most people never even recognize it as a trap at all. It has a name. It is called the Lifestyle Ratchet. There is a mechanical tool called a ratchet. It only turns one way. You can advance it forward as many clicks as you want, but it has a built-in catch that prevents it from going backward. That is its entire design purpose. And somewhere in the architecture of how humans relate to money and status, the exact same mechanism got installed, silently, without your consent, without anyone explaining the catch. That mechanism is the lifestyle ratchet. And understanding how it works is the difference between building wealth and just building overhead. Start with the distinction that most financial conversations skip over entirely. Income and wealth are not the same thing. They are not even close to the same thing. Income is what flows in. It is revenue. It is the number on your offer letter or your quarterly bonus. Wealth is what stays. It is the accumulated result of every decision you made about what to do with the income after it arrived. One is a stream, the other is a reservoir, and the ratchet is the mechanism that keeps draining the reservoir faster than the stream can fill it. Here is how it plays out in practice. You get a promotion, your salary jumps from $140,000 to $175,000. That is a real and meaningful increase. You feel it. So you make a reasonable decision, you upgrade the apartment, maybe you will finally buy the house you have been putting off. You get a better car, you eat at better restaurants with more regularity, you join the gym that costs $180 a month instead of the one that costs $30. Each individual choice feels proportionate to where you are now. And then something quiet happens. The new level becomes the baseline. Within about 6 months, the upgraded apartment will be just your apartment. The better car is just your car. The expensive gym is just where you work out. The novelty disappears, but the cost remains. Your fixed obligations have permanently expanded to match your new income, and the psychological reward that justified the upgrade has completely evaporated. Now comes the catch. Your company restructures, or the market shifts, or you simply want to leave a job that is grinding you down. And you look at your options. Could you take a lower paying role that you actually want? Could you take 6 months to figure out what comes next? Could you negotiate from a position of patience rather than desperation? The answer, in most cases, is no, because going backward financially does not feel like a neutral adjustment. It feels like failure. Downsizing the house feels like admitting something went wrong. Giving up the car feels embarrassing. Pulling the kids out of the school they have been in for 3 years feels like a punishment you are inflicting on your own family. The ratchet clicked, and the catch is now engaged. This is not a character flaw. It is a documented psychological response. Researchers call it loss aversion. Losing something you already have produces roughly twice the emotional distress, as gaining the equivalent thing produces pleasure. So the lifestyle you have built does not just cost money, it costs optionality. Every upgrade that became a baseline is now a floor you are psychologically committed to defending, regardless of what it costs you. And the data reflects this. Recent figures show that households earning above $200,000 a year carry an average of over $11,000 in monthly fixed expenses. That same income bracket reports financial stress levels nearly identical to households earning less than half as much. Same anxiety, same feeling of tightness, just on a more expensive track. That is the ratchet at full operation, more income flowing in, more obligations permanently locked in place, and the gap between the two, the part that could actually become wealth, stays stubbornly thin, which raises an uncomfortable question. If the ratchet has been running for 10 or 15 years, what has actually been getting neglected while the fixed costs kept climbing? The answer tends to show up in the same two places for most high earners. And when you look at those numbers clearly, they are genuinely sobering. That is exactly what gets neglected. And it is the part almost nobody wants to look at directly. Nobody skips the emergency fund on purpose. Nobody looks at their retirement account and consciously decides to underfund it. That is not how this happens. What actually happens is subtler and, honestly, more unsettling. The money just never makes it there. The fixed costs absorb it first. And by the time everything obligatory has been paid, The amount left over for the things that actually build long-term security is whatever happens to remain, which, for a lot of high earners, is not much. This is the part the ratchet obscures, because from the outside, and often from the inside too, everything still looks fine. The income is high, the lifestyle is impressive, but underneath the surface, two critical foundations are quietly going without. The first is the emergency fund. The conventional guidance is 3 to 6 months of living expenses held in liquid savings. For someone with fixed costs of $11,000 or $12,000 a month, that means somewhere between $33,000 and $72,000 sitting in cash, accessible, untouched, not invested, not allocated, just there, as a buffer between normal life and a genuine crisis. Most high earners do not have it. Recent data shows that nearly 4 in 10 American households cannot cover an unexpected expense of $1,000 without borrowing, and that pattern does not disappear at higher income levels the way you would expect. It just gets dressed differently. Instead of an empty checking account, it is a substantial income with no liquidity. The mortgage gets paid, the lease gets paid, the tuition gets paid. But the cash reserve that would allow someone to absorb a job loss, a medical event, or an economic disruption without immediately unraveling, that account is thin, or empty. Or it technically exists, but would cover about 6 weeks of actual expenses. Think about what that means in practice. A man earning $200,000 a year with $12,000 in monthly fixed obligations loses his job. He has 8 weeks of savings. His golden anchors do not pause. The mortgage does not pause. The lease does not pause. The school does not pause. The clock starts immediately, and the pressure to accept whatever offer arrives first, regardless of whether it is the right move, becomes overwhelming within weeks. The financial security as income implied was never actually there. The second thing that gets neglected is retirement savings, and this is where the numbers become genuinely difficult to look at. The median retirement savings for an American man in his early 50s is currently around $93,000, not $930,000, $93,000. For someone a decade or so from a conventional retirement age, that number represents roughly 1 year of pre-tax income for a mid to high earner. It is not a retirement. It is a short pause. Now add the compounding fee problem on top of that. A lot of people with modest retirement balances are also holding those balances in actively managed funds that charge somewhere between 1 and 1.25% annually in fees. That sounds negligible. Run the math, and it is not. And on a $400,000 portfolio earning 7% annually over 20 years, the difference between a 1% fee and a 0.05% index fund fee is somewhere in the range of $160,000. That money did not go to you. It went to fund management, quietly, automatically, every single year. The fee problem and the savings gap compound each other. A smaller balance losing a larger percentage to fees means the gap between where someone is and where they need to be widens faster than most people realize, until they actually sit down and model it out. Most people never sit down and model it out. And here is the honest observation. None of this happened because of poor intentions or financial ignorance. It happened because the fixed cost structure consumed the margin that should have been going elsewhere. The ratchet ran, the anchors held, and the foundations got underfunded while everything on the surface continued to look like success. Which is exactly why the math comparison matters so much. Because once you put two people with identical incomes side by side and run their numbers forward 15 years, the gap that opens up is not gradual. It is sudden, and it is enormous. That is the math. And it is the part that tends to change how people think about every decision that comes after. People tend to think the difference between a good financial outcome and a bad one comes down to some combination of luck, timing, and access to the right opportunities. The right market, the right employer, the right advice at the right moment. And sometimes those things matter. But when you actually run the numbers on two people with identical incomes across the same time period, what you find is that none of those factors explain the gap. The gap comes from one variable, just one, the burn rate. Let me make this concrete. Take two men. Both are 48 years old. Both work in commercial real estate. Both earn $185,000 a year. Same city, same market, same access to the same investment options. Call them Daniel and Kevin. Daniel has built what looks, from the outside, like a very successful life. He has a mortgage on a 5-bedroom house in a desirable neighborhood. He leases an Audi that he upgrades every 3 years. His two kids are in private school. He and his wife belong to a golf club. His fixed monthly obligations, when you add everything up honestly, sit at around $11,200. After federal and state taxes, his actual take home is approximately $10,800 a month. Daniel is spending more than he earns on locked in commitments every month before a single discretionary dollar moves. Kevin earns the same salary, but Kevin made different structural choices over the years. He bought a smaller house in a less prestigious zip code and paid it down aggressively. He drives a 4-year-old Honda that he owns outright. His kids are in public school. His fixed monthly obligations sit at around $5,800. He puts the difference, roughly $4,500 every month, into low-cost index funds averaging a 7% annual return. Now run both of them forward 15 years to age 63. Daniel, despite earning a high income for a decade and a half, has accumulated approximately $150,000 in net investable assets. That is not a retirement. That is a delay. He will work until his health forces a different conversation. Kevin, with the same income, same market, same 15 years, has crossed $1.1 million. He has the option to retire. He may not take it, but he has it. That distinction between working because you want to and working because the fixed costs demand it is the entire game. The math behind this is not complicated, but it is worth slowing down on. $4,500 a month invested at 7% annually over 15 years does not just add up linearly, it compounds. The early contributions earn returns. Those returns earn returns. By year 15, Kevin's portfolio is generating more in passive growth each month than most people save in a year. The engine is running on its own. Daniel's money ran the same for 15 years. It just ran through a different set of pipes. The mortgage, the lease, the tuition, the club. Every dollar was consumed by an obligation that generated no return, built no equity worth mentioning, and left nothing behind except the memory of a lifestyle that felt earned. Here is the number that tends to land hardest. The difference between Daniel and Kevin at age 63 is not $100,000. It is not even $500,000. It is approximately $950,000, nearly $1 million gap, built entirely out of the spread between their monthly burn rates, compounded forward over time. No inheritance, no windfall, no market timing, just structure. And the most uncomfortable part of this comparison is that Daniel probably felt like he was doing the right things for most of those 15 years. He was providing for his family. He was living at a level that matched his income. He was doing what success was supposed to look like. That feeling is exactly the problem, which brings us to the part that actually matters, because knowing the mechanism is only useful if it changes what you do next. And the question is whether there is a realistic path out of the anchor structure once it is already in place. There is, but it requires a specific kind of clarity that most people avoid, because it means confronting some uncomfortable decisions head on. That is the escape plan, and it is more actionable than most people expect. Here is the thing about being anchored. The anchor does not care how smart you are. It does not care how hard you work, or how much you earn, or how clearly you can see the problem once someone lays it out in front of you. As long as the anchor is in the water, the ship does not move. Clarity alone does not free you. Only action does. And the action required is not dramatic. It is not a single, bold decision that changes everything overnight. It is a series of smaller, deliberate choices, made in a specific order, that gradually reduce the weight holding you in place. There is a realistic path out, but it starts with honesty, not strategy. The first step is calculating your actual burn rate, not an estimate, not a rough figure you carry around in your head. The real number, built from every fixed obligation you carry, written down in one place: mortgage or rent, car payment or lease, insurance premiums, subscriptions, tuition, club memberships, loan repayments, everything that leaves your account, whether you think about it or not. Add it up. That number, that total monthly floor, is the minimum cost of your current life. It is what the world charges you just to stay in place. Most people who do this exercise for the first time are genuinely surprised by the result. Not because any single line item is shocking, but because the total is higher than the mental estimate they have been carrying. There is usually a gap of somewhere between $800 and $2,000 between what people think their fixed costs are and what they actually are. That gap is not nothing. Over a year, It is between $9,624 and $24,000 that disappeared without a clear decision being made about where it went. The second step is auditing your obligations honestly, looking at each anchor and asking a simple question. What is this actually buying me? Not what it was supposed to buy, not what it felt like it would buy when you signed the agreement, what it is actually delivering today in terms of genuine satisfaction or necessary function. For most people, one anchor fails that test clearly. The golf club that gets used 4 times a year, the car lease on a vehicle that sits in a garage most of the week, the subscription services that have multiplied quietly across 3 different streaming platforms, 2 software tools, and a meal kit that nobody uses anymore. One of those anchors, when examined honestly, does not survive the scrutiny, and releasing it, redirecting that monthly obligation into a low-cost index fund, changes the trajectory in ways that are surprisingly significant over time. Consider someone paying $1,400 a month on a car lease. They could replace it with a reliable used vehicle purchased outright. Redirect that $1,400 into an index fund at a 7% annual return. Over 10 years, that single change produces approximately $230,000. One decision, one anchor released, $230,000. The third step is the reframe, and this is the one that has to happen at the level of instinct, not just intellect, if any of this is going to hold. Before any significant financial commitment, one question. Does this give me more freedom or less? That is the entire filter. A paid-off car gives you freedom. A new lease takes it away. A smaller mortgage on a house you can genuinely afford gives you freedom. Stretching into the house that impresses people at the cost of financial flexibility takes it away. An emergency fund with 6 months of real expenses gives you freedom. Spending that money on an upgrade that becomes next month's baseline takes it away. The question sounds simple. It is. But applied consistently, it is also the single most powerful tool for resisting the ratchet before it clicks again, because the ratchet never stops offering you the next upgrade. The world is very well organized around getting you to spend more as you earn more. Every raise is a fresh invitation to expand the anchor collection. The reframe does not eliminate that pressure. It just gives you a way to answer it deliberately instead of automatically. And when you start making those deliberate choices, something shifts in how you think about success itself. Here's the realization that ties all of this together. The feeling of falling behind despite earning well is not a personal failure. It is a structural outcome. The anchors, the ratchet, the neglected foundations, the compounding gap, none of it happened because of bad intentions. It happened because the system around you was designed to absorb your income before it could become wealth. Seeing that mechanism clearly is not depressing. It is actually the first useful thing. A few things are worth carrying forward. Fixed costs are not neutral. Every obligation you lock in permanently narrows your options. The ratchet only clicks forward on its own. Going backward requires a conscious decision. Burn rate, not income, determines the eventual outcome. And fees compound just as quietly as returns do, only in the wrong direction. The question worth sitting with is this. Look at your current fixed obligations and ask which ones you chose deliberately and which ones you simply drifted into. The answer usually points directly at what needs to change. One thread this does not fully resolve. If the escape plan works, what does the transition actually look like in practice when the anchors run deep and the obligations feel immovable? That is the harder question, and it is worth exploring carefully.